The Hung isn't just what I call your dad, it's also a race in the Warhammer world that's yet to see an official appearance in Immortal Empires. Well, with the Hung mod, you can not only find them out in the world, but actually play as them. They're nomadic hunter-gatherers that never stay in one place for long and seek to raise all they see before them in honour of their mighty gods. But just how does all of this work in game? Let's take a look and find out. And if you want to take a look at these videos with no ads, then consider becoming a channel member. All of the same videos, but none of the ads. Now, onto the Hung. As usual, we're going to start with their racial mechanics, and they have quite a few. First up, tribal gatherings. These work on a similar system to ogre camps, where you can place a limited number of them across the world and pack and redeploy them as needed. However, unlike ogre camps, they aren't focused on giving you access to the majority of the roster. Instead, they have a limited selection of buildings allowing recruitment of some monstrous units, numerous buffs for armies in their area of effect, the local region, and even some income. With that said, their main settlement building does allow some recruitment for quite a large chunk of the regular roster, so they can still be used for some quick recruitment. The longer each gathering stays in one place, the more settled they become. This grants bonuses such as a larger area of influence, growth and replenishment for nearby armies, and increased income. Buildings in these gatherings cost a mix of gold and plunder. Plunder is a resource similar to meat that armies collect as they battle and raise settlements. This can then be transferred to any owned settlements, just like the Ogre Kingdoms, for the price of gold. As far as I can tell, armies have no use for plunder, so the only thing stopping you from sending everything you have is the fairly steep gold cost. Alongside camps, all armies in the race are also hordes. This means they can build up a settlement to essentially carry around, allowing them to recruit from wherever they are, as well as gain all kinds of buffs for their armies. These are pretty standard as far as hordes are concerned, so I won't spend too much time here. However, the mix of hordes and camps does, in my opinion, leave camps feeling a little bit pointless outside of one key resource. That resource is Khan's Horde, and it is required for the adaptive Warlords mechanic. This is a kind of convoluted mechanic to explain, so stay with me. Whenever you raise a settlement in Nagaroth, the Chaos Waste, or Cathay, you gain Devastation, which fills up each of these bars. The more the bars fill up, the more bonuses you gain for your faction. However, this does decay over time, so it's pretty difficult to reach the max tier, let alone stay there. Also on this screen, you have a ring of 6 units surrounding the number of regions raised in each region. The more regions you raise over the course of a campaign, the higher tier of unit you'll unlock for use in your own armies, and these can be purchased using Khan's Horde. And yes, for some reason the number of raised buildings doesn't seem to be working all the time at the moment, but the DLC that came out kind of balked everything, so just be happy it's working at all. Khan's Horde can also be spent on offerings to the Raging Sky, which are essentially rights. You have 4 options, and they're actually pretty strong and related to the 4 Chaos Gods under some different names. Sinch, or Char, allows you to open rifts to teleport between the North and South Chaos Wastes, alongside bringing buffs to spells and a little bit of barrier as a treat. Nurgle, or Onogal, causes all of your armies to be infected with a plague that brings buffs to healing and replenishment both in and out of battle, alongside spreading corruption and attrition to nearby enemies and settlements. Slanesh, or Shah Nor, reduces enemy siege defenses and increases income gained from raising, sacking, and raiding. And Khorne, or Khorgar, brings huge offensive stat boosts and a passive granting increasing attack and resistance, alongside Unbreakable, whilst lowering defense and causing Rampage the lower each unit's HP falls, at the cost of removing all ammo from all units, forcing you to focus entirely on melee. These are pretty straightforward, you just spend them, use the buffs, and that's it. Fertility is a new stat given to every single province on the map, and it waxes and wanes over the course of the game. At high levels, it provides a large number of bonuses to everything from income to replenishment, and the same can be said for low levels, but obviously penalties. It can be affected by various actions such as raising settlements, placing tribal gatherings, and certain buildings. Outside of this, there's not a massive amount you can do to use this to your favour, outside of just waiting for a region to have a strong fertility before attacking, so I don't really worry about it or even notice it too much. And lastly, treacherous dealings. This is similar to mechanics like Cal's Machinations or Grease's Gold actions. Essentially, you can spend Khan's Horde to enact various effects for yours or other factions. These are pretty simple, like revealing territory, damaging garrisons, and manipulating relations. Again, these are all really simple and nothing too strong, so another way to spend Khan's Horde and give yourself just a little more of an edge. Now we come to the different factions. First up we have the Hmong, and they're led by Khan, or Khan. They start in the top left corner of the map in the Chaos Waste just north of Nagaroth. Both legendary lords share a number of faction effects. They both earn more money from vassals, which is useful seeing as they have limited ways to make reliable income otherwise. They both fight worse underwater and gain attack and XP when fighting against certain factions. For the Hmong, that's the Dark Elves. Their unique mechanic is the lands beneath the raging sky. Every time you raise a settlement, the region will gain the Mark of the Endless Steppe. This provides a couple of bonuses for all local allied armies, along with massive penalties for all foreign factions, especially if they are non-chaotic. This makes it extremely challenging for regions to be recolonized, allowing you to effectively claim territory for you and your allies without actually capturing settlements. Doing this also increases the attack, defense, and most importantly, leadership aura size of your faction leader, so it's a great way to buff them up over the course of a campaign. This is one that seems a lot more complicated than it is, so just keep on raising and enjoy the benefits, especially when fighting in those regions. Urkhan's army brings a bunch of bonuses for cavalry, including weapon strength, missile and spell resistance, and the rage passive for even more resistance and damage the longer they stay in melee. The other faction in the mod is the Manchu, and they are led by Zhao Kor. They start in the top right corner of the map in the Chaos Waste, just north of the Great Bastion. As I said, both lords share the majority of their effects, so the main difference here is the attack and XP bonuses are now versus Cathay. They also have their unique mechanic, the Manchu Invasion. This is essentially the Bastion threat mechanic from Cathay, but flipped. Instead of worrying about defending, you can instead defeat Cathay armies to speed this along, causing more tribes to attack and effectively help you in your conquest against Cathay. Once these armies arrive, you'll automatically have a military alliance, so be able to suggest targets for them to attack. It's another mechanic that's fairly simple and can be mostly forgotten about, as you have very little control when they turn up outside of battling against Cathay, which you'll be doing anyways. In battle, Zhao's army brings bonuses for hunt raiders and pillagers, increasing their damage significantly. All units gain a small amount of missile resistance and, during siege battles, a passive to increase their stats in every area. Now for a mod review. The Hung are a bit of a weird race to get used to playing. On the one hand, they are pretty simple because that's just how hordes are. They roam around battling whoever they want and don't really have to do much defending since they never take settlements outside of their gatherings. However, on the other hand, they've got so many little mechanics to keep track of that it gets pretty confusing pretty fast. When you drop into the campaign and see all of these menus about fertility, expanding the steppes, Khan's Horde and more, it can feel a little bit overwhelming. But once you realise that you can ignore a large portion of it, they get a lot simpler, and that was weirdly disappointing. I love loading into a campaign and feeling lost. It's part of what made playing the Chaos Dwarfs for the first time so much fun. However, playing the Chaos Dwarfs today, there's still a lot to keep track of, so it makes for an engaging campaign with a lot of thought. Here, it just descends into your usual Horde gameplay pretty quickly, which is a little disappointing, at least for me. Now, I'm not actually saying this mod is bad, it's actually a great Horde campaign and the various mechanics do make them one of the more engaging Hordes, but still, Horde gameplay is inherently a little bit mindless, so maybe it's on me for hoping for something different. As for the two Lords, and they're both worth playing but not for anything mechanical. Khan has the expandable steppes, which is kinda neat but can be ignored since there's no way to actively interact with it outside of playing like normal. And Zhao Kor has the Bastion Threat Uno Reverse card, which again is kinda neat but is limited in its interactivity outside of playing like normal. Instead, the reason to play both of these lords is their starting locations. They are literally on opposite ends of the map to each other, so you get to use the race, its mechanics and units in two very different areas against two very different sets of factions. Both starts are fairly engaging, especially with how limited your recruitment is early on, so it makes for a fairly engaging campaign until you get things rolling. As with all Horde campaigns, once you max out your Hordes, it becomes a cakewalk, but until that point, it can be pretty tense. Oh, and both Lords have narrative victories they can achieve, which is such a small touch, but so welcome to give you something to work towards. Overall, for the campaign side of the Hung, whilst it may not be the most complex campaign in the game, it still is a lot of fun. As long as you understand what you're getting into, you should have a blast, especially if you're a fan of blasting through everything in sight with little regard for making friends. But what I want to know now is, what do you think of the Hung? Are they a campaign you'd like to try or even have tried before? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and if you want more mod videos, then check out this one all about my top 10 mods I played in 2025. Oh, and Happy New Year, by the way, forgot to say.